President Trump gave an update on the administration's efforts on infrastructure on Tuesday at Trump Tower, and then held a combative question-and-answer session that touched on the violence in Charlottesville, VA, his view on removing Confederate statues, Stephen K. Bannon's role in the White House and more. Following is a transcript of those remarks, as prepared by the New York Times. It has been lightly edited for clarity. Read more coverage. _Trump Great to be back in New York with all of our friends and some great friends outside the building, I must tell you. I want to thank all of our distinguished guests who are with us today, including members of our Cabinet Treasury Secretary Stephen Mnuchin, OMB Director Mick Mulvaney, and of course our Transportation Secretary, who's doing a fabulous job, Elaine Chao. Thank you all for doing a really incredible and creative job on what we are going to be discussing today, which is infrastructure. We've just had a great set of briefings upstairs on our infrastructure agenda. My administration is working every day to deliver the world-class infrastructure that our people deserve, and that frankly our country deserves. That's why I just signed a new executive order to dramatically reform the nation's badly broken infrastructure permitting process. Just blocks away is the Empire State Building. It took 11 months to build the Empire State Building. But today it can take as long as a decade, and much more than that. Many stories where it takes 20 and 25 years just to get approvals to start construction of a fairly routine highway. Highway builders must get up to 16 different approvals involving 9 different federal agencies governed by 29 different statutes. One agency alone can stall a project for many years and even decades. Not only does this cost our economy billions of dollars, but it also denies our citizens the safe and modern infrastructure they deserve. This overregulated permitting process is a massive, self-inflicted wound on our country. It's disgraceful, denying our people much-needed investments in the community. And I just want to show you this, because it was just shown to me. I think I'm going to show it to the media, both real and fake media, by the way. This is what it takes to get something approved today. Elaine, you see that? So this is what it takes. Permitting process flowchart. That's a flowchart. So that can go out to 20 years. This shows about 10, but that can go out to about 20 years to get something approved. This is for a highway. I have seen a highway recently in a certain state. I won't mention its name. It is 17 years. I could have built it for $4 or $5 million without the permitting process. It costs hundreds of millions of dollars, but it took 17 years to get it approved and many pages of environmental impact studies. This what we will bring it down to. This is less than 2 years. This is going to happen quickly. That's what I'm signing today. This will be less than 2 years for a highway. So it's going to be quick. It's going to be a very streamlined process. And by the way, if it doesn't meet environmental safeguards, we are not going to approve it. Very simple. We are not going to approve it. Maybe this one will say, let's throw the other one away. Would anybody like it from the media? Would anybody like that long, beautiful chart? You can have it. So my executive order also requires agencies to work together efficiently by requiring one lead agency for each major infrastructure project. It also holds agencies accountable if they fail to streamline the review process. So each agency is accountable. We're going to get infrastructure built quickly, inexpensively, relatively speaking. And the permitting process will go very quickly. No longer will we tolerate one job killing delay after another. No longer will we accept a broken system that benefits consultants and lobbyists at the expense of hard-working Americans. Now I knew the process very well, probably better than anybody. I had to get permits for this building and many of the buildings I built, all of the buildings I built in Manhattan and many other places. And I will tell you that the consultants are rich people. They go around making it very difficult. They lobby Congress. They lobby state government, city governments to make it very difficult so that you have to hire consultants and that you have to take years and pay them a fortune. So we are streamlining the process, and we won't be having so much of that anymore. No longer will we allow the infrastructure of our magnificent country to crumble and decay. While protecting the environment, we will build gleaming new roads, bridges, railways, waterways, tunnels and highways. We will rebuild our country with American workers, American iron, American aluminum, American steel. We will create millions of new jobs and make millions of American dreams come true. Our infrastructure will again be the best in the world. We used to have the greatest infrastructure anywhere in the world. And today, we are like a third world country. We are literally like a third world country. Our infrastructure will again be the best. And we will restore the pride in our communities, our nation. And all over the United States will be proud again. So I want to thank everybody for being here. God bless you. God bless the United States. And if you have any questions, we have Mick. You could come up here, please. Come on up, Mick Mulvaney. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Reporter: why do you think these CEOs are leaving your manufacturing council, Trump? Because they're not taking their jobs seriously as it pertains to this country. But we want jobs, manufacturing in this country. If you look at some of those people that you are talking about, they are outside of the country. They are having a lot of their product made outside. If you look at Merck as an example, take a look, excuse me, take a look at where their product is made. It's made outside of our country. We want products made in the country. Now I have to tell you, some of the folks that will leave, they're leaving out of embarrassment, because they make their products outside. And I have been lecturing them, including the gentleman that you are referring to, about you have to bring it back to this country. You can't do it necessarily in Ireland and all of these other places. You have to bring this work back to this country. That's what I want. I want manufacturing to be back into the United States so that American workers can benefit. Reporter: why did you wait so long? Crosstalk: Trump IDIDNT wait long. IDIDNT wait long. I wanted to make sure, unlike most politicians, that what I said was correct, not make a quick statement. The statement I made on Saturday, the first statement, was a fine statement, but you don't make statements that direct unless you know the facts. It takes a little while to get the facts. You still don't know the facts. It is a very, very important process to me. It is a very important statement. So I don't want to go quickly and just make a statement for the sake of making a political statement. I want to know the facts. If you go back to my statement, I brought it. Crosstalk: as I said, remember, Saturday, we condemn in the strongest possible terms this egregious display of hatred, bigotry and violence. It has no place in America. And then I went on from there. Here is the thing. Excuse me. Take it nice and easy. Here is the thing. When I make a statement, I like to be correct. I want the facts. This event just happened. In fact, a lot of the event didn't happen yet as we were speaking. This event just happened. Before I make a statement, I need the facts. So I don't want to rush into a statement. So making the statement when I made it was excellent. In fact, the young woman, who I hear is a fantastic young woman, and it was on NBC, her mother wrote me and said through, I guess, Twitter, social media, the nicest things. And I very much appreciated that. I hear she was a fine, really actually, an incredible young woman. Her mother, on Twitter, thanked me for what I said. And honestly, if the press were not fake and if it was honest, the press would have said what I said was very nice. But unlike you, Crosstalk, and unlike the media, before I make a statement, I like to know the facts. Crosstalk about a couple of infrastructure questions. Reporter: the CEO of Walmart said you missed a critical opportunity to help bring the country together. Did you? Trump: not at all. I think the country, look, you take a look. I've created over 1 million jobs since I'm president. The country is booming. The stock market is setting records. We have the highest employment numbers we have ever had in the history of our country. We are doing record business. We have the highest levels of enthusiasm. So the head of Walmart, who I know, who's a very nice guy, was making a political statement. Crosstalk: he would do it the same way, because I want to make sure when I make a statement that the statement is correct. And there was no way of making a correct statement that early. I had to see the facts, unlike a lot of reporters. Crosstalk: IDIDNT no, David Duke was there. I wanted to see the facts. And the facts, as they started coming out, were very well stated. In fact, everybody said his statement was beautiful. If he would have made it sooner, that would have been good. I couldn't have made it sooner, because I didn't know all of the facts. Frankly, people still don't know all of the facts. It was very important. Crosstalk: excuse me. It was very important to me to get the facts out and correctly. Because if I would have made a fast statement, and the first statement was made without knowing much other than what we were seeing. The second statement was made with knowledge, with great knowledge. There are still things, Crosstalk: excuse me. There are still things that people don't know. I want to make a statement with knowledge. I wanted to know the facts. Reporter, 2 questions. Was this terrorism, and can you tell us how you are feeling about your chief strategist, Steve Bannon? Trump: well, I think the driver of the car is a disgrace to himself, his family and this country. You can call it terrorism. You can call it murder. You can call it whatever you want. I would just call it as the fastest one to came up with a good verdict. There is a question. Is it murder? Is it terrorism? Then you get into legal semantics. The driver of the car is a murderer. What he did was a horrible, inexcusable thing. Reporter: can you tell us how you are feeling about your chief strategist, Mr. Bannon? Trump: go ahead. Another reporter: Steve Bannon. I would echo Maggie's question. Trump: I never spoke to Mr. Bannon about it. Reporter: but can you tell us broadly, do you still have confidence in Steve? Trump: well, see. Look, I like Mr. Bannon. He is a friend of mine. Mr. Bannon came on very late. You know that. I went through 17 senators, governors, and I won all the primaries. Mr. Bannon came on very much later than that. And I like him. He is a good man. He is not a racist. I can tell you that. He is a good person. He actually gets a very unfair press in that regard. Well, see what happens with Mr. Bannon. He is a good person, and I think the press treats him frankly very unfairly. Crosstalk reporter: Senator McCain has called on you to defend your national security advisor, H.R. McMaster, against these attacks. Crosstalk: Trump: I've already done. I did it the last time. Crosstalk reporter: and he called on you again, linking it to the alt-right. Crosstalk: Trump: Senator McCain, you mean the one that voted against Obamacare? You mean Senator McCain who voted against us getting good health care? Reporter: Senator McCain said that the alt-right is behind these, and he linked that same group to those that perpetrated the attack in Charlottesville. Trump: well, I don't know. I can't tell you. I'm sure Senator McCain must know what he is talking about. When you say the alt-right, define alt-right to me. You define it. Go ahead. No, define it for me. Come on, let's go. Reporter: Senator McCain defined them as the same group. Crosstalk: Trump: what about the alt-left that came charging at, excuse me, what about the alt-left that came charging at the, as you say, the alt-right? Do they have any semblance of guilt? Crosstalk: let me ask you this, what about the fact that they came charging with clubs in their hands, swinging clubs? Do they have any problem? I think they do. So, you know, as far as I'm concerned, that was a horrible day. Crosstalk: wait a minute. I'm not finished. Fake news. That was a horrible day. Crosstalk: Trump: I will tell you something. I watched those very closely, much more closely than you people watched it. And you had a group on one side that was bad, and you had a group on the other side that was also very violent. And nobody wants to say that. But I'll say it right now. Crosstalk: you had a group on the other side that came charging in without a permit, and they were very violent. Reporter: do you think that what you call the alt-left is the same as neo-Nazis? Trump: all of those people, excuse me, I've condemned neo-Nazis. I've condemned many different groups. But not all of those people were neo-Nazis, believe me. Not all of those people were white supremacists by any stretch. Those people were also there because they wanted to protest the taking down of a statue, Robert E. Lee. So, excuse me, and you take a look at some of the groups and you see, and you would know it if you were honest reporters, which in many cases, you are not. But, many of those people were there to protest the taking down of the statue of Robert E. Lee. So this week, it is Robert E. Lee. I notice that Stonewall Jackson is coming down. I wonder, is it George Washington next week, and is it Thomas Jefferson the week after? You know, you really do have to ask yourself, where does it stop? But they were there to protest, excuse me, you take a look, the night before, they were there to protest the taking down of the statue of Robert E. Lee. Infrastructure question. Go ahead. Reporter: does the statue of Robert E. Lee stay up? Trump: I would say that is up to a local town, community, or the federal government, depending on where it is located. Reporter: are you against the Confederacy? Reporter: how concerned are you about race relations in America, and do you think things have gotten worse or better since you took office? Trump: I think they've gotten better or the same. Look, they have been frayed for a long time. And you can ask President Obama about that because he would make speeches about it. But I believe that the fact that I brought in, it will be soon, millions of jobs, you see, where companies are moving back into our country. I think that's going to have a tremendous positive impact on race relations. We have companies coming back into our country. We have 2 car companies that just announced. We have Foxconn in Wisconsin, just announced. We have many companies, I say, pouring back into the country. I think that's going to have a huge positive impact on race relations. You know why it is? Jobs. What people want now, they want jobs. They want great jobs with good pay. And when they have that, you watch how race relations will be. And I'll tell you, we are spending a lot of money on the inner cities. We are fixing the inner cities. We are doing far more than anybody has done with respect to the inner cities. It is a priority for me. And it's very important. Reporter: Mr. President, are you putting what you are calling the alt-left and white supremacists on the same moral plane? Trump: I am not putting anybody on a moral plane. What I'm saying is this: you had a group on one side and you had a group on the other, and they came at each other with clubs, and it was vicious and horrible. And it was a horrible thing to watch. But there is another side. There was a group on this side, you can call them the left. You have just called them the left, that came violently attacking the other group. So you can say what you want, but that's the way it is. Reporter: you said there was hatred, there was violence on both sides. Trump: well, I do think there's blame. Yes. I think there is blame on both sides. You look at both sides. I think there is blame on both sides. And I have no doubt about it. And you don't have doubt about it either. And if you reported it accurately, you would say, reporter: the neo-Nazis started this thing. They showed up in Charlottesville to protest. Trump: excuse me. They didn't put themselves down as neo-Nazis. And you had some very bad people in that group. But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides. You had people in that group, excuse me, I saw the same pictures as you did. You had people in that group that were there to protest the taking down of, to them, a very, very important statue and the renaming of a park from Robert E. Lee to another name. Crosstalk: Trump: George Washington as a slave owner. Was George Washington a slave owner? So will George Washington now lose his status? Are we going to take down, excuse me, are we going to take down statues to George Washington? How about Thomas Jefferson? What do you think of Thomas Jefferson? You like him? Good. Are we going to take down the statue cause he was a major slave owner? Are we going to take down his statue so you know what, it's fine? You are changing history, you are changing culture. You had people, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally. You had many people in that group other than neo-Nazis and white nationalists. Okay, and the press has treated them absolutely unfairly. Now, in the other group also, you had some fine people, but you also had troublemakers, and you see them come with the black outfits and with the helmets and with the baseball bats. You had a lot of bad people in the other group too. Reporter: who has the press treated unfairly? Sir, I'm sorry, I just didn't understand what you were saying. You were saying the press has treated white nationalists unfairly. I just didn't understand what you were saying. Trump: no, there were people in that rally. I looked the night before. If you looked, they were people protesting very quietly, the taking down the statue of Robert E. Lee. I am sure in that group there were some bad ones. The following day, it looked like they had some rough bad people, neo-Nazis, white nationalists, whatever you want to call them. But you had a lot of people in that group that were there to innocently protest and very legally protest. Because I don't know if you know, they had a permit. The other group didn't have a permit. So I only tell you this. There are two sides to a story. I thought what took place was a horrible moment for our country, a horrible moment. But there are two sides to the country. Does anybody have a final question? Do you have an infrastructure question? Reporter: what makes you think you can get an infrastructure bill? You didn't get healthcare, you didn't get tax reform. Trump: well, you know, I'll tell you. We came very close with healthcare. Unfortunately, John McCain decided to vote against it at the last minute. You'll have to ask John McCain why he did that. But we came very close to healthcare. We will end up getting healthcare. But we'll get the infrastructure. And actually infrastructure is something I think we'll have bipartisan support on. I actually think Democrats will go along with the infrastructure. Reporter: Mr. President, have you spoken to the family of the victim of a car attack? Trump: no. I will be reaching out. Reporter: when will you be reaching out? Trump: I thought that the statement put out, the mother's statement, I thought was a beautiful statement. I tell you, it was something that I really appreciated. I thought it was terrific. Under the kind of stress that she is under and the heartache that she is under, I thought putting out that statement to me was really something I won't forget. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Reporter, do you plan to go to Charlottesville? Mr. President, crosstalk Trump, does anyone know I own a house in Charlottesville? It is in Charlottesville. You'll see. Reporter, is that the winery? Trump, it is the winery. Crosstalk, I know a lot about Charlottesville. Charlottesville is a great place that's been very badly hurt over the last couple of days. I own actually one of the largest wineries in the United States. It's in Charlottesville. Reporter, what do you think needs to be done to overcome the racial divides in this country? Trump, I really think jobs can have a big impact. I think if we continue to create jobs, over 1 million, substantially more than 1 million. And you see just the other day, the car companies coming in, with Foxconn. I think if we continue to create jobs at levels that I'm creating jobs, I think that's going to have a tremendous impact, positive impact, on race relations. Reporter, what you said today, how do you think that will impact the racial Trump? Because the people are going to be working. They're going to be making a lot of money, much more than they ever thought possible. That's going to happen. The other thing, very important, I believe wages will start going up. They haven't gone up for a long time. I believe wages now, because the economy is doing so well, with respect to employment and unemployment, I believe wages will start to go up. I think that will have a tremendously positive impact on race relations. Thank you. Page 2, Washington. President Trump reverted Tuesday to blaming both sides for the deadly violence in Charlottesville, VA, and at one point questioned whether the movement to pull down Confederate statues would lead to the desecration of memorials to George Washington. Abandoning his precisely chosen and carefully delivered condemnations of the Ku Klux Klan and neo-Nazis from a day earlier, the president furiously stuck by his initial reaction to the unrest in Charlottesville. He drew the very moral equivalency for which a bipartisan chorus, and his own advisers, had already criticized him. I think there is blame on both sides, the president said in a combative exchange with reporters at Trump Tower in Manhattan. You had a group on one side that was bad. You had a group on the other side that was also very violent. Nobody wants to say that. I'll say it right now, Mr. Trump defended those gathered in a Charlottesville park to protest the removal of a statue of Robert E. Lee. I've condemned neo-Nazis. I've condemned many different groups, he said. Not all of those people were neo-Nazis, believe me. Not all of those people were white supremacists by any stretch. He criticized alt-left groups that he claimed were very, very violent when they were sought to confront the white nationalist and neo-Nazi groups that had gathered in Charlottesville. Many of those people were there to protest the taking down of the statue of Robert E. Lee, Mr. Trump said. So this week, it is Robert E. Lee. I notice that Stonewall Jackson is coming down. I wonder, is it George Washington next week and is it Thomas Jefferson the week after? You really do have to ask yourself, where does it stop? It was a remarkable rejection of the criticism he confronted after waiting 2 days before naming the right-wing groups in the bloodshed that ended with the death of a young woman after a car crashed into a crowd of protesters. Mr. Trump accused people he called the alt-left of swinging clubs as they came charging at, as you say, at the alt-right. He said some of the right-wing members of the crowd in the Virginia park were bad. But he added that the other side came charging in without a permit and they were very, very violent. Aides had urged him for days to take the high ground, persuading him on Monday to read a brief statement condemning the neo-Nazi groups from the diplomatic room in the White House. But over the past day, back in his private New York residence for the first time since becoming president, Mr. Trump was alone, without his wife and young son, and consuming hours of television, with many on cable news telling him he had not done enough. On Monday night, he was tweeting his frustration, accusing the fake media of never being satisfied. But by Tuesday morning, the president was fuming again. At a scheduled event about the permitting process for infrastructure, Mr. Trump asked for questions, contrary to the wishes of his aides, including John F. Kelly, his new chief of staff, who stood to the side, looking grim. Venting, his face red as he personally executed the defense of his own actions that no one else would. Mr. Trump all but erased any goodwill he had earned Monday when he named racist groups and called them repugnant to everything we hold dear. John F. Kelly, the White House chief of staff, on Tuesday during Mr. Trump's news conference at Trump Tower in Manhattan. Al Drago for the New York Times. His largely unprovoked presidential rant on Tuesday instantly sparked an even more intense critique, especially from Republicans. Speaker Paul D. Ryan called white supremacy repulsive and said there can be no moral ambiguity. Representative Ileana Ros-Lehtinen, Republican of Florida, tweeted blaming both sides for Charlottesville. No Senator Marco Rubio, Republican of Florida, said white nationalists in Charlottesville were 100% to blame and wagged his finger at the president for suggesting otherwise. The white supremacy groups will see being assigned only 50% of blame as a win, Mr. Rubio said on Twitter moments after Mr. Trump's remarks. We cannot allow this old evil to be resurrected. Senator Todd Young of Indiana, a freshman Republican, wrote, "This is simple. We must condemn and marginalize white supremacist groups, not encourage and embolden them." Even members of Mr. Trump's own military appeared to take quick offense to their commander's words. Hours after the president spoke, the Marine Corps Commandant, General Robert B. Neller, wrote in a tweet that there is no place for racial hatred or extremism in a TUSMIC. Our core values of honor, courage, and commitment frame the way Marines live and act. Mr. Trump delivered his remarks in the lobby of Trump Tower, where officials had spent much of the day trying to erase certain telltale signatures of the brand that would be caught on TV. Most significantly, a blue curtain was placed over the Ivanka Trump display in the lobby. If Mr. Trump was aware of the reaction that would ensue after his clearly improvised remarks, he appeared immune to the consequences of those words, which electrified the lobby of his signature office building. It was there in 2015 that he launched his presidential campaign with a furious assault on illegal immigrants and a declaration that Mexicans were rapists bringing crime into the United States. Instead, the president seemed determined to convince any doubters that he did not misspeak in his first reaction to the events in Virginia on Saturday. Mr. Trump said his initial statement was shaped by a lack of information about the events in Charlottesville, even though television statements had been broadcasting images of the violence throughout the morning. There was no way of making a correct statement that early, he said. I had to see the facts, unlike a lot of reporters. I didn't know David Duke was there. I wanted to see the facts. Within minutes, Mr. Duke, a former Ku Klux Klan leader, praised Mr. Trump's comments as a condemnation of leftist terrorists. Thank you, President Trump, for your honesty, courage to tell the truth about Charlottesville, Mr. Duke said in a Twitter post. But Mr. Trump also made it clear that even now, with the benefit of hindsight, he does not accept the overwhelming criticism that he should have reserved his condemnation for the white supremacist and neo-Nazi groups. Mr. Trump called the driver of the car, who the authorities said crashed into the crowd, James Alex Fields Jr., 20, a disgrace to himself, his family and this country. You can call it terrorism. You can call it murder. You can call it whatever you want. Speaking bluntly about an ongoing investigation in a way that presidents rarely do, Mr. Trump said Mr. Fields, who is being held without bail on charges of murder and malicious wounding in the death of Heather Heyer, is a murderer. What he did was a horrible, inexcusable thing, Mr. Trump said. But he refused to explicitly say that the killing of the young woman was a case of domestic terrorism, saying only that you get into legal semantics. The president also gave himself a pat on the back from Ms. Heyer's mother, who thanked him in a statement for words of comfort and for denouncing those who promote violence and hatred after Monday's remarks. Mr. Trump said, I thought it was terrific. Under the kind of stress that she is under and the heartache she is under, I thought putting out that statement to me was really something I won't forget. He also unleashed his frustration at the news media on Tuesday, saying they were being fake because they did not acknowledge that his initial statement about the Charlottesville protest was very nice. Again and again, Mr. Trump said that the portrayal of nationalist protesters in the city were not all neo-Nazis or white supremacists, and he said it was unfair to suggest that they were. He said blame for the violence in the city, which also took the lives of 2 Virginia state troopers when the helicopter crashed, should also be on people from the left who came to oppose the nationalist protesters. The president said it should be up to a local town, community to say whether the statue of Lee should remain in place. Soon after Mr. Trump was done speaking, he wandered close to the velvet rope line that held a group of about 20 reporters and photographers, his mood noticeably brighter. A reporter asked if he planned to visit Charlottesville after the tragedy there. Mr. Trump replied by saying he has a house there, and provided an endorsement of the Trump Winery nearby. Then he disappeared into Trump Bar, taking a shortcut to his residence next door. Correction: August 15, 2017. An earlier version of this report incorrectly quoted President Trump's words about taking down statues of historical leaders. His correct quote is, "So this week, it is Robert E. Lee. I noticed that Stonewall Jackson is coming down. I wonder, is it George Washington next week and is it Thomas Jefferson the week after? You really do have to ask yourself, where does it stop?" Michael D. Shear reported from Washington, and Maggie Haberman from New York. A version of this article appears in print on August 16, 2017, on page A1 of the New York edition with the headline "Trump Again Says Two Sides at Fault in Rally Violence."